was in 1858 when Lincoln achieved national fame in his candidacy for the seat in the Senate. He was running against Stephen Douglas, who was a Democrat and an apologist for not necessarily the idea of slavery, but the concept that states should have the right in and of themselves to decide what they would do about slavery. In fact, he was the one who put forth the Kansas-Nebraska Act. It was his bill. And Lincoln was opposed to a lot of the things that Douglas was doing. During the time when they were both running for the seat, they famously had 7 debates, and it was these debates which put Lincoln in the public spotlight. They say that these debates were so popular that they were like prize fights, and thousands of people would crowd to see them. It was in one of these debates that Lincoln gave his famous House Divided speech, in which he said that a house divided could not stand, and that he believed the country couldn't go forward half slave and half free. At this point, he didn't predict that the Union would be broken up, but he said that it would have to decide to be one thing or the other. Despite the popularity which he achieved through these speeches, he did not win the Senate seat, and at this point he returned to Illinois to his law practice. However, he was very popular because of those speeches, although he didn't win. So when 1860 rolled around, it was suggested that he should run for president. And in January of 1860, he conceded that he would accept the nomination if it were given to him. He made a speech in New York on February 27th, and it was said that no first speech made by a candidate in New York ever inspired such enthusiasm from the audience. Everyone who heard him was deeply struck by the wisdom, the power of his words, the clear visionary ideas. Although some people regarded him as awkward or even ugly, no one could deny the strength of character and the boldness which he showed in these speeches. The last 2 presidents, Franklin Pierce and James Buchanan, had been elected most strongly on the fact that they were rather indecisive on the slavery issue. Neither one of them held a strong opinion, so they were viewed as safe options. Thus, it's no surprise that they both were rather disappointing in their stance on the issue, being rather weak. After all, that was why they'd been elected in the first place. In stark contrast to this was Lincoln, who was very bold in his statements. Now, he didn't say he was going to come in and abolish slavery, but he did say that the territories must not have any new slave states. They must be free. And that was an important first step toward removing slavery. Even Lincoln, who was regarded as the great emancipator, was a moderate Republican and a rational, intelligent man. He did not want to start a civil war, and earlier in his political career, he didn't see it as an imminent threat. All that would change after he won the 4-way election, defeating his 3 opponents by a wide margin. As soon as Lincoln was elected, the South decided that it was sure he would infringe upon its rights. So one by one, the southern states began seceding, until eventually 7 of them had seceded from the Union to form the new Confederate States of America by the time he took office. To avoid the assassins who were supposedly following him, Lincoln traveled in a variety of disguises on his way to Washington. Although this was criticized by some as his sneaking into the Capitol, I think what happened later to him shows that he could be none too careful. In his inaugural speech, Lincoln tried to welcome the South back as his brother, and to encourage the southern states to not be afraid that he would infringe upon their rights, that he merely wanted to preserve the Union. They didn't believe him, and although he tried to keep the Civil War from starting, he was determined on 2 points. He would not be the first one to fire a shot against fellow states, but he would not let these new Confederate states take over any of the Union forts. When the Confederacy captured Fort Sumter in South Carolina, he had no choice but to send reinforcements and provisions to the military attachment there, which effectively began the Civil War.